All right, so welcome everyone. Thanks for being so many of you here today. My name is Marc-Olivier Bourdeau. I'm the marketing coordinator here at ConsorTech. So this is the first episode of our FME Server webinar series. We had a lot of requests from clients or non-clients to have more information about FME Server. So either people already have FME Desktop and they're looking to upgrade their license, or they're looking to upgrade to FME Server, or people that are actually using the FME Server and maybe they want some more training or tips and tricks in the software. So we decided to do a series of 7 episodes that touches the top functionalities of FME Server. So by registering to this series, you'll have access to the recordings as soon as the episodes are done. Well, within the week, you're gonna have an email with the recordings. During the presentation, if you have any questions or anything, there's a menu on your left that you can use, and I will try to redirect your questions to Alexi or Alison, who are going to give this presentation. So to begin with this episode, we're going to do a bit of an introduction to ConsorTech and to FME itself. But after that, we're really going to go deeper in demos, and because the point of this series is not to do like a sales pitch or anything, but more we want to open the FME server and show you like what it does and what are the best practices, and maybe give you some project ideas within the series. So as I said, Alison and Alexi are presenting. Alison is the GIS data integration consultant here at ConsorTech, and so is Alexi, who is a GIS data integration specialist. So ConsorTech, for those who don't know us already, we've been in business for 30 years. We're in the geomatic and IT departments mostly. We help our clients take advantage of their data, and we have the biggest team of FME experts in North America, of FME certified experts. We are the only safe software platinum partner in North America. And we've done over 100 projects of automations or system integration, application connections. So yeah, that's pretty much it for ConsorTech. And I'll let Alison show you the agenda for today's presentation. Then again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me with the menu on your left, and we'll try to answer them during the webinar or save some few minutes at the end to answer your questions. Thank you.
All right, hi everybody. I'm here with Alexi. I'm going to be mostly giving the presentation, but sometimes he's going to chime in with some questions and comments. So we're done with introductions. We're going to take you through a bit about what is FME, since we are in the intro webinar. We're going to do an FME server walkthrough, so to sort of take a look under the hood, what's in FME server, what can you do with it, and then we're going to get into some demos with the new automations functionality. So it's a new functionality in 2019. Automations, it does some of the same kinds of things as the old notifications, and we're going to build a workflow with that. So we'll build a schedule, email notifications, and make it a conditional workflow. So, without further ado, what is FME? So FME was originally built, almost 30 years ago, almost, to basically fight data silos. So you have organizations who spend a lot of money collecting data. You have data in Esri, so for the GIS department, you have data in permitting, you have data in finance, you have data in any department. You also have data coming in externally, data that you need to send out, etc. So a lot of the times this data is stored separately in different formats with different schemas, etc. And it needs to be transformed and consolidated so that everyone can benefit from the data and you can make the most of it. So the solution is data integration, and that's where FME comes in. So FME as a software can ingest data from Esri, it can ingest CAD data, it can ingest raster data, it can just ingest Excel, all kinds of data, SAP, for example, and transform it, manipulate it, automate it, and then it can become more usable for everyone. So the GIS department, permitting, finance, for example, may all have access to the same data. A quote, I won't read the whole quote there, but the main objective of FME and what FME does well is to help achieve the consistent access and delivery of data. So making sure everybody who needs it gets access to it and in the way that they want. So the actual FME platform, well, what we're trying to do with FME, like I said, is connect, transform, and automate. And the platform that we're doing that on, we have FME Desktop, we have FME Server, and we have FME Cloud. So with FME Desktop, that's where you actually build and run your workflows. That's where you're going to go. You're going to connect to your data. You're going to do the data manipulations. You're going to add the transformers, your readers, and your writers, and whatnot. And then if you want to automate that or make that accessible to other people within your organization or outside of your organization or integrate it into some kind of larger solution, you can put that up onto FME Server. So that's where we get the element of automation. And FME Server and FME Cloud are basically the same thing, except that FME Server is on premises, so you have it within your organizational architecture. And FME Cloud is a software as a service, and you can publish your workspaces to the cloud. It's basically the same thing. So people will often, when you have a lot of internal databases and and you have the resources on premises to be able to operate FME Server, folks will usually use that because it's easier to connect into your local databases. FME is the data integration solution with the best support for spatial data worldwide. So you have a lot of ETL solutions or solutions that read data, write data, manipulate it, but FME is the one basically that has the spatial data component, and it's always had that from the beginning. So that's really where we can get a good benefit from FME as well. So here's another example of just running a little workspace. So with FME, we're connecting to our data sources. It could be many different kinds of data sources. It could be on the web, could be a CAD file, could be a shape file, could be Excel, etc., database. You're going to transform it. And eventually, with FME Server, the idea is to automate. So here's the obligatory FME Desktop Workspace photo. This is a good example because it's a traffic data download process from Banff, which is in Alberta. So what we're doing here is what they needed to do is read traffic data on a regular basis, consistently, and take that data and write it into their own internal SQL Server database. So rather than have somebody work full-time doing all these downloads and manipulations and writing into SQL, they built a FME workspace. So what we're doing in the first section is we're reading the index of the counties and figuring out what it is, like where we're going to get the data. And then we actually can, with this workspace, it automatically downloads the data that we need. So we use a transformer called the HTTP caller, which will automatically go get the data. And then we can move on to the next step, which is step number 3, normalize the data. So here is where we're actually going to change the data and manipulate it so that it fits into our schema. So many times people have to receive data from external sources, and it's not in the right format. The fields are different. Everything is different about the data, but we need to modify all of that to get it into our format and our schema. So that's what we're doing here. And then in step number 4, we're removing the existing data from the database that we don't need anymore. And at the end, we're writing to SQL. So this is great even on its own, but when we put it up onto FME Server and it runs automatically on a schedule, it removes a lot of manual processing and allows users to have data in real time. So what is FME Server? Well, we've talked about it. FME Server is where you automate your workflows. So we're automatically providing integrated data to stakeholders on a real-time or scheduled basis. Sort of the main way we set that up is the first thing is set up a trigger. So what is actually going to cause the workflow to start? It's event-based. So it could be an email, it could be the result of another workspace, it could be somebody drops something into a folder. There's something that needs to trigger the workspace. Assemble, so that's setting up basically the workflow, like what is it going to do? What data does it need to go get? What actions should happen? How do we control it? And we can do that with automations, which, like I said, is a new function in 2019, a new interface. We have that visual interface where we can build the automations directly in FME Server. And once we've done that, we've eliminated the manual effort and actually carrying out these tasks on our own. Whether that's doing the actual work that the FME workspace does, or just setting it up so that it runs when we need it to run and having it notify the appropriate people, etc. It eliminates a lot of that work. So here's an example of an event-driven automations, which is an event-driven workflow. So this one uses directory watching. So drag and drop visual tool to connect actions and events. We're going to, like if we look at this workflow, we start with the directory watcher as the trigger. So that means that if somebody drops a file into a folder, the workspace, the workflow will get triggered. We're going to use this filter to make sure that it's the right kind of file. If it is the right kind of file, we're going to launch the water meter workspace. And depending on the outcome, if it's a pass or a fail, there's going to be an email sent. Obviously, a pass would give a passed email, and a fail would give a failure email, or maybe it's going to send it to a different person, or whatever. So that's just an example there. So now we'll get into the demo. So we're going to start with a walkthrough of FME Server. So I'm going to open up FME Server homepage. So this is FME Server 2019. And right up front, we have the help. So if you need any assistance, usually the documentation, Safe Software's documentation is pretty good. You have access to the FME community, some demos, et cetera, et cetera. You can see the recent jobs that have been ran. You can see the last published workspaces. And yeah, so what we can do right now is we can run a workspace. So if I go into my samples, I have in my samples repository, which is basically where the workspaces are stored, a workspace called Austin Apartments, which takes CAD data, so AutoCAD, and converts it into KML. So for those of you who haven't worked with KML or who don't know what KML is, it is a format that is used by Google Earth. So anyone with a computer who's able to have access to Google Earth can look at it and see it on a map. So then we have the option to download the data. So that's the way it was configured. We can either download it, we can stream it. We can also use Job Submitter, which would just run it in the background and copy it to a predefined location. So in this case, because I want to show you, we're going to do data download. So I'll just go ahead and run it. And I can see that the job was completed. It's job number 210. If I go into the details, I can see the log. So this is all stored in FME. FME Server. So you can always go back and access it and see what has been ran. So if I want to take a look at the data, I can click on this link. It's going to give me the zip file.
So, Alison,
Yep.
is there any difference between running your workspace on FME Server, as you just did, than on FME Desktop?
Well, the way we're running it here is we're not actually touching the automations part yet because we are running it manually from within FME Server. However, the difference is that when we run it on FME Server, we have the dashboard element. So we can see in the jobs that it's been ran, and we can see that we can see who ran it, we can see the features. Basically, we have all the information that we wouldn't have easy access to if we ran it only in desktop. And it's all stored on the server. So it's accessible to whoever needs to have access to it.
Okay.
So it's almost like it, but with a bit more functionality. When we get into the automations, that's when it gets a bit more interesting. So yeah, so I've clicked on the data. I wanted to just open it up for you. And that's our result, Austin Apartments. So if I open that up, Google Earth is going to take me right there. And I can see on the map all of the different apartments in Austin, Texas that we have in our data set. And when we're writing to KML, we can configure it how we want, have different categories and whatnot. So that's the workspace, that's the workflow that we're working with. So just to continue our walkthrough, so we've ran a workspace. We can look at the results when we look at the jobs, see what was ran, whatnot. If we also want to just take a look, one of the neat functions is that we can filter. So we can filter the jobs based on the user, based if the job succeeded or failed, the repository, depending on, you might have different repositories for different projects. So we have some good filtering functionality here. And we can see what's in the queue and what's running. So right now, nothing's in the queue and nothing's running. The next thing we have on the menu is the automations. So for automations, if we want to create a new automation, we're going to click on Build. And here's where we're going to get started. We'll get there in a bit. Or we can manage. And actually, we have one here that I did previously. It's still running, so I'm actually going to turn it off. I'm going to stop this automation. But you can manage the automations that you have, and you can have them started or stopped. So after that, we have schedules. So this is the older, or the classic schedule function. So you can just schedule workspaces in here, but it doesn't give you necessarily the functions, all of the functions that we're going to see in automations. After that, we have repositories. So in here is where basically the different folders where your workspaces are going to go, just to keep it organized. And also you can control who has access to what, who's the owner, you can share them, and you can associate different repositories with different engines using the queue. That's a little bit more, maybe we'll see that in a later webinar. So one of the really fancy new things about FME Server 2019 is actually the Workspace Viewer. So this allows us to actually see a workspace in FME Server in the web interface, whereas before we were not able to do that. So I can open up my workspace, Austin Apartments. In case I don't remember, maybe I don't remember what it did or how it's working or something. If I don't have FME Desktop on my computer, I can still access it from here, which is great. And I can I can't edit it. I'm not able to work in here as if it were FME Desktop, but I can take a look at what the parameters are, and I can really see what's going on in my workspace. So that's really neat. We're getting more and more visual with FME Server, so that's great. And We can also download it. So whereas in the past you had to go into FME Desktop and then download it from there, here we can download it directly. So I just downloaded the Austin Apartments workspace. After that, we have server apps. So we'll see that in a later webinar. And notifications. So these are the classic notifications. We have our publication, subscriptions. So that's previously the only way that we were able to create workflow, automation workflows. So that's the notification section here. Some publications. I have a few things set up in here, but we're not going to focus on that today.
Can you tell us, are the notifications going to get replaced by the automation part, or?
Well, for now, we have both. So for now, notifications and automations, they're not exactly the same thing. There's a few functionalities that are slightly different between the two. But for now, they're existing side by side for now and the near future. But we don't know exactly where SAFE's going to go with that, if they're going to convert all the functionality to automations or not. So we'll see. We'll see. Interesting to see. After that, we have resources. So that's sort of like the file share on FME Server that we can use. Here we can put our data. We can access the engine, the logs, and whatnot in the resources here. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about all of these. I'm going to move on. We'll get started with creating an automation. So if I want to create a new automation, I'm going to click on Build. And I'll call it Automation Austin Apartments. Okay. Oh, whoops. I didn't put it in the right place. I'm going to click Create New first. And I'm going to save it as that. So it's really important to save these because they don't save automatically. So I'm going to click Save. I'm going to give it a name, Automation Austin Apartments, and add some tags like KML, DWG because that's our source data, maybe Austin. These help us keep our workspaces and our automations organized. I'm just going to say OK. So now I have my automation set up, and I'm ready to get started. So what I have here in the screen is what all automations need, which is a trigger. So what's going to actually cause our automation to start? If I click on that, I have to first select a trigger event. So I have some options here. Like a lot of different things can actually start an automation and trigger it. So some options like the one that we saw before is the directory modified. So if somebody drops something into a directory, we can receive an email. If an FME server topic is notified, for those of you who know the notifications, automations and notifications are in fact connected this way. But today we're going to set it up with a schedule. So I'm going to click on Schedule Initiated. And we'll do repeat on interval. And we're going to have it repeat every minute. So that we can see it go. And we could set a start and an end time, but we're just going to leave it for now as start immediately and does not expire. So click OK or apply. And we can see now that our trigger, which was generic, has turned into a schedule. We can move that around on the screen if we want to. So what do we want our schedule to do? Well, we're going to have to define the next action. So we know that we want our schedule to launch a workspace. So I'm going to click on Next Action. Check out what the options are. So for the actions, the first one obviously is the one that we want, which is run a workspace. But some of the other ones maybe we'll see later is merge messages. We can set up a filter, a log, and we can also do external actions. So once this schedule happens, we can make an HTTP request. We can notify an FME server topic. We can send a text via Apple Push. send an email, upload something to Dropbox. So we have a lot of options here. And we can actually set up automations that don't even use FME workspaces, which is pretty interesting too. So this technology is actually pretty powerful and easy to use, and you don't even need to have a workspace to have some interesting functionality here. So we're going to go back, click on Run a Workspace. Now we got this orange box here with the FME logo and exclamation point, which says, oh, we need to do something here. It's not configured. So we'll go to our samples repository. The workspace we want to select is the one we showed you before, the Austin Apartments. And there's no parameters to set up here, so we're just going to click Apply. All right, so that now we can see we got our good workspace here. Let's save just so that we don't lose it, just in case. And at this point, that's all we really need. So this is our automation. So we set up our schedule. Schedule gets triggered at a certain time, and then the workspace runs. So let's just run that and see what happens. For the moment, it's off because we haven't started the automation yet. If we want to start it, we're just going to click on this button, and the automation is running. So as long as this automation is running, this schedule is going to get, or this workspace is going to get launched every minute. So if we go back to jobs and completed, we should see, yeah, so the first one we see here, job 217, is got launched just now. And we can see also that the source name is Automation Austin Apartments, which is the automation that we just created. And the source type is automation. So we can click on that, take a look at the log, make sure everything worked properly. And that's what we have in our dashboard. So another neat functionality for 2019 that I personally love is the show log in reverse order. In the past, you had to scroll all the way down and go to the end of the pages to find the bottom of the log, to see if there was an error, what was the error, etc. So now you can just show log in reverse order and backtrack. See, like, okay, so what actually happened here? That's one of my favorite functionalities. And we have some other buttons here. You can just show only errors, which we have none, only the warnings, and we can control what we see in the log here as well, which is great. Which is a lot easier to use than a text file, right, Alexi? Yeah.
That's for sure. Searching the logs could be really painful, and adding those functionalities is really neat.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look. We'll go back and see. We should have another one by now. Yeah. So we got our second one that ran at 15:32. So it looks like our schedule is running properly. So that's nice if we're working within the FME server interface. We can check it, make sure it's there, everything's good. But, you know, like when we're automating things, we don't really want to be looking at FME server all the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some email notification functionality. So in order to do that, we're going to need to stop the automation and set that up. So I'm going to make some space. So we got the Austin Apartments here, and we have what happens if it passes and what happens if it fails. Right now, there's nothing configured. So what we'll do is we'll configure the next action. So here we go. Next action details. So we got some options here. This time, so before we had the internal action, which was run a workspace, this time we're going to send an email. So we've got to configure that. So there's different ways to configure email, sending an email in FME Server with the automations function, but luckily we have some templates here. So we're going to use Gmail just to keep it simple. And that sets all that up for us. The only thing I have to that I have to add here is I have to put my account. So don't try to email me at this account because I don't really use it except for demos. But I put that info in, set up who I'm going to email. I'm just going to email myself. And put put in some CCs, BCC, etc. Email from, I'll put the same thing, and we gotta set up the subject. Whoops, did I just lose that? I clicked outside of it, so gotta be careful, don't click outside of it. Let's do that again. There we go, and the subject, we're going to say Austin Apartments. Good, and for the email body, we can add a little bit more functionality. So we'll also say Austin Apartments space past, and we'll add a little bit more info. So we can go into the text editor. And we can grab some parameters here. So maybe we want to put the job ID. If you want to go check it out, we'll just go into Workspace and click on job ID, and it'll plug that in there. Maybe we want to know what time it finished. And maybe we want to know the workspace name too, whatever information that we need here. So I'm going to say OK. Just validate that and make sure that it's valid, my connection is good. I'm going to always use that just in case you made some kind of error with your SMTP settings. And click apply. So wait a second. Oh, it looks like I didn't lose the one from before. And I actually just created two. So if that happens, just delete what we don't need, bring that over, and connect that. And I'm going to save that, keep saving it because it's not saving automatically. So now I have my past email set up, and I'm going to also want to set up a failure email because we do also want to know if it fails. So instead of restarting the whole thing, I'm just going to delete this, and I'm just clicking delete on my keyboard. And I'm going to do a copy paste. So I'm going to do use my keyboard for that, Control C, Control V. Connect that up. It's very intuitive, this interface here. I'm going to click on my email option. I'm not going to change much. I'm just going to change the info here. This is a fail, and this is a fail. Real pretty capital letters. Okay. So this is a super basic like text email body, but you can also make one in HTML and make it a bit fancier if you like, you know, with your header of your organization and whatnot. If you want to send emails externally or internally, you can do both. So yeah, there's a lot of options here. Just to keep it simple, we'll leave it at that. And just click apply. So save, and let's test it out. So I got my email here. Oh, I got a lot of emails, but we'll wait for the new one. So I'm going to start it. It's running. You can check in the jobs. Okay, it looks like it just ran. Sometimes it takes a second. There we go. Austin Apartments Workspace Pass. So this is the one we just ran. AustinApartments.fmw, job ID 220. That's all the information that we need. So it looks like our email setup is working. So if we want to create if we wanted to create something that's a bit more robust, we can, you know, also have the schedule trigger multiple workspaces, for example. So right now it's only triggering the Austin Apartments workspace, but if I wanted to add another one, I can just add another event or an action. Just drag that over and connect it up. So now when my schedule is triggered, I can run 2 workspaces. So I'm just going to go grab another workspace that I have in my repository, which is the Earthquakes Extrusion workspace. I'm going to click Apply. So now that one's set up here. And say we only want to receive an email if both of them pass. So for now, I'll just put the failed one up there, leave our passed one in the middle, and add another action. So if we want to only receive one email if the 2 of them pass, we have to use the function merge messages. So instead of run a workspace, I'm going to click merge messages, apply, and then just move these over here, connect these up, see when I'm done. I'm going to add the past here. So for this email to get triggered, both of those need to be passing, and we'll get a pass. So I'm going to just go in here and change the details a little bit. So earthquake and apartment spaces passed. And just put the time finished here just to keep it simple, and say apply. And we can leave the failed for the Austin apartments. And what we'll do is we'll add a failed for the earthquakes extrusion. We'll do another copy paste up, but for this one, we're going to change the info. We're just going to say earthquakes. Workspace fail, and earthquakes. Workspace fail. All right. And we also have a functionality in here, which is the bookmarks and annotations that we have in desktop that are really important to use to keep things organized. So I'm just selecting those, adding a bookmark, that email, notifications. Just expand that a little bit. And we can add some annotations as well. Call that one pass. Both workspaces. And these ones, we could add them on these ones. Maybe I'll add a bookmark here. Workspaces, we've got to open that up if you want to see it. So this is a little bit more organized. You can see what's going on. Let's save it. And let's see what happens when we run it. So we'll take a look at the jobs. Looks like we got two of them that ran. So we got our earthquakes extrusion and our Austin apartments. So that's good. They both ran. Let's see if I got an email. Oh, it looks like I did. Earthquake and apartment workspaces passed. And we got the time finished. So now what we've done here is we have set up, go back to the automation. We've set up an automation that includes a trigger, which is the schedule, runs multiple workspaces. It's a conditional workflow, so depending on if they're passing or failing, we're going to have different actions afterwards, so different email notifications, depending on the situation. And it seems to work. We're getting our emails. Looks like we're at the end of the demo. Any questions? If anybody has any questions, please send them to Marco. Do we have any questions there?
No, no one. So I think you were pretty clear.
All right. Well, I'll pass it back to you, Marco.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Can you just open the PowerPoint?
I can try. There we go.
Awesome. All right. Oh, we actually have a question here. Is there any way? Oh, we have two questions. Hold on.
So is there any way to run a command or a script with automations? Yes, there is. To run it directly, like what for sure what we can do with automations is run a workspace that would contain the script. And depending on what your script is doing, if one of our event-driven actions would be able to do the same function, then that would be great. Maybe we wouldn't need the workspace, but otherwise, within a workspace, you can use a system caller transformer to run the script and launch that workspace with automations.
And then we have Alice, who asked, is this function only in 2019?
Yes, automations is new for 2019. So 2019 is a very exciting year for FME Server. Some of the new functions are really, really neat. So if you have any questions about migrating to FME Server 2019, you can let us know. We've already done a bunch, so yeah.
Thank you. So if you have any other questions, keep sending them. So this, for now, concludes the webinar. We will see you, the next webinar, it will be on schedules on November 6th. And then we'll have another webinar on December 4th for real time. And then we're having a little Christmas vacation. So we'll see you back in 2020 on January 15th for applications integration. Then we'll have February 12th, the directory watcher. We'll show the apps on March 11th. And we're going to finish with the REST API on April 8th. So that's it. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Alexis. So if you have questions, we're going to stick around for 2 or 3 minutes and try to answer them. So send all your questions. Also, I forgot to mention, if you registered to this webinar series, you're going to have the recordings of this presentation in the following week. So you can either listen to it again or share it with your coworkers or friends or both. Friends, coworkers, yeah, share it to everyone. Whoever wants to learn more on FME Server. So we have a lot of thank you messages. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Well, that's it then. If you have any questions, maybe send them to me on marketing@consortech.com or at Allison or Alexis, which you have their emails over here. So thank you everyone for being here. We'll see you on November 6th.
All right. We hope that FME helps you all be as relaxed as that guy on the screen.
Bye.